Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good Tuesday morning. It is June the 25th of 2024, and we're so glad that you decided to tune in to Financial Issues. If this is your first time, we just encourage you to keep listening because we're going to tell you all about how our ministry helps to educate people about financial issues from a biblical worldview. So if you're watching during the live program, which is at 8 a.m. Central Time, 9 Eastern Time, we're going to ask you to call in, especially if you're a veteran partner of our ministry. The number is 610-363-1110. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your heart about your experience as a partner of this ministry. So let's get right to it today with our stewardship verse of the day from 2 Corinthians 6:14. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness, or what fellowship has light with darkness? You know, this scripture brings up images for me of the yoke. And, you know, back during farming times, whenever this scripture was first repeated, you know, the yoke was a powerful harness that forced two very powerful creatures, usually oxen, to walk together in unity to accomplish a certain purpose, which was to plow fields or harvest fields. So what if during that time one of these very powerful animals wanted to go left and the other one wanted to go right? Well, it would be a very unproductive mess. All of the productive energy that was to be harnessed in unity to accomplish a certain purpose would be wasted. They would be struggling against one another and the task at hand would not be accomplished. So that's why the scripture very wisely encourages us not to be unequally yoked. Seth, what do you think?
Yeah, it's good, Shana. I love it. I think for us as Christians, we can understand from this that we have no fellowship with the forces of evil. Amen. That's a pretty foundational concept in the scripture. It applies to our marriages. You mentioned that idea of being yoked. We can't be unequally yoked, the Bible says. Our friendships, our churches, who we trust, and also I think applies, as we talk about on the show, where we invest our money. So that's why we're here to offer all of you, our listeners, a strategy to help you defund darkness, as we talk about, with your investment dollars so that you can fund the light. And Shana, you'd mentioned earlier in the program, the FISM partnership. That's what we offer here. And I think it kind of leads us to a good teachable moment here about the FISM partnership that's based in this idea of being partnered with the light. Kind of the first question that I have for you here, Shana, is what are some of the basics of the FISM partnership for maybe some of our new listeners that we've gotten on NRB and CSN? What are some of the basics?
Well, you know, 2 Corinthians 6:14 brings to mind my early days with this ministry.
Yeah.
You know, the founder of the ministry and the previous co-host, our late co-host, Dan Celia, would often refer people to me when they desired to honor God in their investments, but they weren't sure if they could do it alone. So I would often hear stories about how people would hear a biblically responsible investing for the first time and their hearts would be pierced. They would be convicted when they found out what kind of garbage they had been supporting with the money that God gave them when they were trusting maybe someone else to make investment decisions for them. And they would find out for the first time that some of the companies that they owned were using company money to support things that they were praying against, like abortion, pornography, the LGBTQ agenda. So they brought their heartfelt convictions to their advisors, and sometimes they were even Christian advisors, and their concerns were dismissed. So I would talk to these people, and I would often offer to share my story about how my mind was changed with their advisors. Now, they rarely ever called, and sometimes when they did, it was just to really, I think, kind of gather ammunition about why they shouldn't do this in the first place. Yeah. But, you know, for many of them, it was hard for them to leave their longtime advisors. Sometimes they were friends, sometimes they were brothers or sisters in Christ. But they came to realize that they would stand before God one day alone, without the advisor next to their side or anyone else to speak up and give an excuse for why they refused to follow the convictions of their own heart. And so many of them chose to go it alone, chose to become the managers of their own portfolios and adopt our strategy. And then some found financial advisors that were convicted in the same ways that they were, and would handle their money the way that they wanted it to be handled.
You know, Shana, that's really good. And it's a encouraging, also sobering reminder for us, I think, in every area of our life, that when we follow Christ, oftentimes we will stand alone. And so the cost of faithfulness is high, but the cost is also worth it. Speaking of the cost, in our ministry, we offer a partnership for $132 a year. We understand that this is a difficult thing when you try to be biblically responsible and no one else around you is doing it. But we get to offer people something when they join us for $132 a year. What are some of the things that we offer?
Yeah, well, so we do a lot of research here at the ministry. Of course, we do some biblically responsible research. Now, we have a couple of tools that do a lot of that research for us that we use as a guide. But then we do, once we've screened those companies for biblically responsible activity or non-biblically responsible activity, then we do the analytics on it. You know, we look for good companies that people can invest in and expect a reasonable level of success over time. So for $132 a year, they get a step-by-step process through setting up their own accounts. So, you know, finding a discount brokerage. We don't have a recommendation. We don't have our own platform. We don't do anything like that. So we just encourage you to find a good discount brokerage platform that that is easy to use for you and that offers, you know, some of the features that you would like for it to offer. And then we help guide you through videos on how to choose an asset allocation model, how to then start building your own portfolio, how to manage that portfolio once it's built. We give you tools like the portfolio tracker, where you can enter all your positions and you can see how you're doing and building your portfolio according to the plan that you chose. We offer monthly partner conference calls, which we had one just last week, and that is posted to our website for any of the partners who missed it. We post a weekly commentary to the partner side of the website. So sometimes we share things in a little bit more depth or a little bit more detail than what we do over the air, just to the general in the public. And as a last resort, you know, if after going through all of those steps, you still are convicted to be biblically responsible, but just think, hey, I can't do this on my own, then, you know, we can provide you with a contact phone number for someone who might be able to help you with that.
Yeah, that's good, Shana. Shana, give us the why here. Why should people become partners with FISM? I think there are many reasons, but give us your take. Why should we?
Well, the why is that you have a conviction to honor God in everything that you do. And you're no longer compartmentalizing your investment saying, oh, well, you know, business is really kind of a secular thing and we have to follow the secular rules to be successful, so on and so forth. You know, that is just hogwash, really. You know, real wisdom is found in the scriptures. And so when we seek to honor God first in everything that we do, then we can trust God that he's going to give us a level of success, whether that means success as we measure them in our earthly portfolios or eternal rewards. You know, this is for people whose eyes have been opened to how the enemy has been very subtly gaining access to the resources that God gave us to manage and using that access to fund wicked things that God-fearing and God-honoring Christians would never knowingly give to, like abortion that seeks to snuff out life in the womb, or to fund the great LGBTQ lie that are being proposed to adults and even worse to young people. You know, we know what the scripture says about leading those astray, especially the young ones. It's worse than having a millstone tied around your neck and being tossed into the depths. So, you know, we don't want to support that kind of garbage. So it's for people whose hearts have been convicted to stand up and put a stop to the funding of evil. It's a conviction of the heart, and it shows that we love God and we reject evil with all of our hearts, and that we're willing to put our money where our values are.
Yeah, that's good, Shana. You talk a lot how, money talks. And so where you put your money says a lot about your heart. And that's core to who we are, just like what you said, talking about that stuff. I don't think we have time to get to more of this, Shana. Maybe we'll pick it up in the next segment there.
Sounds good. And we're waiting for you to call. If you're a partner of the ministry and you'd like to share your experience about maybe what pushed you over the edge, what convicted you to become a partner, and how it's gone for you, give us a call. 610-363-1110. Well, don't go anywhere. We're going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more financial issues right after this.
I'm John.
I'm Debbie, and we're Samaritan members.
We have 8 children, ages from 30 down to 15, and we have a ministry called Family Man Ministries.
When he left the pastorate to start the ministry, we had no income for about a year potentially, and so we were living on almost nothing. The cost of health care seemed impossible because we had a big family. And so when I started researching ministries, there was no comparison. It was just the best deal. And so a year after we joined, my 10-year-old daughter at the time got pneumonia, and it was scary. Someone sent a card just to Maggie, and it said, not just that we're praying for you, but that God will always take care of you, and here's $5 for you to go out and get ice cream. It was just really special.
To make that connection, that's an amazing thing. I was sold on Samaritan Ministries. I just thought, okay, I'm a part of this.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Back to Financial Issues, everybody. Good to be here with you this Tuesday morning. Shana and I were just talking about the benefits of the FISM partnership, and that's why we're here, folks, is to give you this biblically responsible strategy where you can grow your money long term, but most importantly, do it in a way that honors God. Shana, just kind of a last question here as we finish up this conversation. We know during this time in particular, there might be some limits when it comes to the plethora of options for new buys. But could you talk about the idea of pockets of opportunity? I know you talk about this on the show a lot. There's always pockets of opportunity in the markets. And how does this relate to the benefit of joining the FISM partnership now? What would you say to that?
Yeah, so we've posted some commentary. You know, the market is at new highs. It's making new highs all the time. Right now we're in a bull market. And so there's a lot of excitement that comes with that. But you know, wisdom tells us to not be led by our emotions, to be diligent in the way that we do put money to work. So, you know, whether the market is reaching all-time highs or all-time lows, there's likely going to be some pockets of opportunity. Sometimes there are more, those pockets of opportunity are much broader. Sometimes they are much narrower. So sometimes we will have a smaller buy list. And that's because it becomes harder and harder to find, good companies at decent entry points. So just like now, there might be fewer and fewer companies on the buy list, but, you don't always need to buy something. We're not traders. We're not asking you to turn over your portfolio every week or every day, or, try to move in and out. We're helping you build a good, solid portfolio over a long period of time. So what we want to really do is find companies that have great fundamentals, great management, great business models, and do a great job executing them. Companies that, as we say often, operate in excellence. And we want to find decent entry prices. So there's certain times, just by the nature of the economy, we have peaks and valleys in the economy. We go through prosperity times, we go through recessions, and sometimes it's just harder to find good companies than it is with other times. So.
Yeah, good stuff, Shana. Thank you for that. I think we can kind of pick up some more of that conversation later, but I do know we have a petition out right now, if you wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Yes, we do. Yeah. So part of our strategy is to alert you by email when it's time to sell a company. Yeah. So, we're not gonna issue a sell alert and say, oh, well, because it's up so many percentage or down so many percentage, you need to sell and move around. But we are going to alert you when fundamentals have deteriorated, or more importantly, when a company is no longer biblically responsible. So that happened last week. We had a sell alert for a company, and I can just tell you what it is because it's on the front page of our website. It's Crocs. They have violated some of our standards for biblically responsible activity. And so we have asked our partners that own the company to sell the company, and not only to sell the company, but to sign the petition to alert Crocs as to why we're doing it. So you don't even have to be a partner to sign that petition. Anybody can do it. You don't even have to actually own the shares, because, we're letting them know that we're a group of investors, maybe who own the company already, or who would have considered owning the company if it were not doing what it was doing. And it kind of outlines what they're doing. So if you really have questions about, what is biblically responsible investing, this is a great real life practical opportunity for you to go and you can see what they're doing and why you wouldn't want to have your money invested in a company that's doing that. Because although you're an owner of the company, when you own shares of the company, you don't get to make the day-to-day decisions about what the company's doing with shareholder money, but you retain responsibility as an owner of the company. So if you can't really change what the company's doing, then you only have really one choice, and that's to get out of it or not invest in it in the first place. So we're not looking for Christian companies. We're not looking for Chick-fil-A's or Hobby Lobbies. We're just looking for companies that stay neutral. We want corporations to stay neutral, just operate in excellence, do what you do, run a good company, and return value to shareholders. Let individuals and ministries like Financial Issues get engaged in the culture war. So companies stay out of it. That's for individuals to do, and that's for ministries to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Shana, this is one of the things that I love most, I think, about what the partnership offers, is not only is it a defensive strategy against wicked companies, but this is kind of our offensive thrust against these companies, is signing these petitions and making our voice heard and seeing what kind of change we can, bring about. It's really good.
Yeah. Yeah. And, unfortunately, the left has a much more sway with corporations than the right does. And that's because much of Wall Street is pretty liberal. So they're sympathetic to the causes, and sometimes they're just afraid of what those organizations will do to their bottom line if they don't cooperate and fund these agendas.
Yeah, it's well said. By the way, Shana, I did drop that link in the chat for our live audience, so got some folks who already signed it there. And if you're watching on a replay version of the show, that's part of the reasons why you have to get the live show, so you can join in the live conversation there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Lots of different places that you can do that.
Yeah.
And if you're one of those who likes to do social media, do all those social media things like share, subscribe.
Whatever the kids do.
Whatever the kids do. Yeah. Well, let's turn our attention to some financial issues. On Monday, let's take a look at what the markets did yesterday. The indices began the week, the final week of June, trending upward in the early hours, but by the afternoon, the major indices were mixed, and they closed that way. So the Dow was up 0.67%. The Dow's really been lagging in the last year to date, really in the last 12 months, and the tables kind of turned. So the Dow was up 0.67. The S&P was down about a third of a point, and the NASDAQ was down over 1% in its worst day since April. The pre-markets this morning are indicating kind of a return to what we had been seeing, with the S&P and the NASDAQ indicating positive opens. The S&P indicated to open about a fifth of a point up, and the NASDAQ almost a half of a point up, while the Dow is indicating a negative open. So the 10-year Treasury sits at 4.25%, and oil sits at 81.50 a barrel. So speaking of oil, are you going somewhere this summer? Whether you're driving or flying, you're going to be using some kind of evil fossil fuels.
Oh, no.
But, the stats tell us that Americans are on the move this summer, and likely they're a lot happier at the gas pump than they have been in a while. Gas prices are down to around an average of $3.50-ish cents, we'll say, I guess, depending on where you are. In my area, we're actually seeing gas under $3. So that's been less painful to fill up at the pump.
Yeah, lucky you guys, Shana. We're up 360s in Pennsylvania today, so not as fun.
Mm-hmm. So, gas prices are about 30% lower than where they were 2 summers ago. If you remember back 2 summers ago, the national average hit $5.11 at the pump. But gas prices in the $3.50 range are still more than 50% higher than they were in January of 2021, right before President Biden took office. So when President Biden took office, gas prices were about $2.34 on average. So speaking of when Biden took office, this is an election year. So we're hearing all sorts of election year math. We're hearing a lot of rhetoric, and I suspect that will ramp up this week as we're scheduled to see a debate between President Biden and former President Trump that will, I'm sure, be very interesting. So we should have a good bit to talk about on Friday, because there's not a whole lot of economic news coming out this week. But, I've seen things like, I saw an MSNBC article about how Biden is a brilliant oil trader. And I just, sometimes I have to listen to this stuff because I just can't really believe my ears, and I can't really believe why anyone would say that Bidenomics is working. So the gist of the story was that Biden made over $582 million from sales of oil as he was trying to time the market, and that he was timing the market to perfection. Well, they did mention that he sold $180 million 180 million barrels of oil from our strategic oil reserve, and he sold it at around $95. So I'm not disagreeing with that. And that he bought it back at $67. Well, that's not exactly what happened. In 2022, when inflation was running at 9% and there was a midterm election coming in the fall, the Biden administration had to do something. 180 million barrels were sold with a promise that they would buy it back when oil hit between $68 and $72. Well, actually, there was more than 180 million barrels sold. 291 million barrels were actually removed from the SPR, the Strategic Oil Reserve, bringing it to a low level of 347 million barrels in June of 2023. That was about half of what it would hold. Since then, the Biden administration has returned only about 14 million barrels of the almost 300 million that were depleted. Now that the price is almost $80 a barrel, rather than in the low 60s or 70s that the administration is now willing to pay to replenish the oil reserve. Don't believe me? Would you rather see the government numbers? Well, I I don't have the graphics of what's actually up on the screen, but I'm trusting that there's a chart up there now that shows the weekly U.S. ending stocks of crude oil. And this information is brought to you by the Energy Information Administration. So that is, these are the government numbers. According to the EIA, in January of 2021, there were 638 million barrels in the SPR. By July of 2023, we hit a low of 347 million barrels. And recently, as of 6/14 of 2024, there are 371 million barrels. Simple math, 291 barrel difference in reserves between 21 and 23. So, question, if Biden was so brilliant, why didn't he buy back the oil when it was in the upper mid 60s, as indicated by the numbers of the EIA? Well, if you listen on a station that only carries the short version of the show, we wish you a very good day. If you want to catch the full show, go to financialissues.org. For the rest of you, we're going to be back right after. Hi, this is Shana Bird, the host of Financial Issues. The Financial Issues family is so blessed to have saved tens of thousands of babies, all thanks to the generous support of you, our listeners and viewers. For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. Please go to preborn.org, that's preborn.org, or financialissues.org and click on the preborn logo. Save a baby, save a life.
Samuel Case, news anchor with FISM News, sits down to read real comments from real viewers.
All righty, let's see a bigger one here from Spectrum Nomad. That's a fancy name. Finally, a non-biased news source that tells everything how it is without having to push their opinion. You know, it's not necessarily true we're not biased. We are Christian, we are conservative, but you're totally right that we don't try to push our own opinions or commentary in the story. So it's really great to hear that you're picking up on that.
If you don't get life right, you're not going to get all the other issues correct, period. It is the issue that impacts every other issue. Life is the central part of what keeps this republic together. It is the contract that the founding fathers passed down through multiple generations. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You don't have life, you don't have a republic. There is a temptation out there right now. And I want to just tell you we must resist it. There's this temptation that we cast this issue aside. How does that honor God? It doesn't. And if it wasn't for preborn, I would be super just confused and depressed, because there has never been, in my opinion, a more disjointed time in the pro-life movement. We need a machine to go up against the Planned Parenthood beast. Like, we have to play offense against the pro-abortion forces in this country, okay? We have to play offense. And preborn does it in this compassionate, merciful, godly way that is just so inspiring and amazing.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only, and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Thanks for sticking with us here at Financial Issues. We're so glad that you guys tuned in today. Our phone lines are open, 610-363-0937, 1110 is the phone number. So you can share your experience, encourage somebody else to be biblically responsible, or you can ask us questions. If you've got questions about the strategy, that's one of the benefits of being a partner, is that you can call in and ask questions. So 610-363-1110. The markets have opened this morning, and they have opened as indicated. So the NASDAQ up about 0.4 of a point. The S&P barely in positive territory, up 13.13, and the Dow down about 0.15. So there's not a whole ton of economic data that's coming out this week, and we're getting close to earnings season again in about 3 weeks. So we'll see how inflation has impacted companies' bottom lines, along with some of the other economic conditions that we've been reporting to you. Well, 610-363-1110 is the phone number. You will be the first person in the call queue, but we do have some activity in social media land, right?
We do, Shana. We got Bill and Carol from Alabama saying, what do I need to consider regarding timing for reallocating or making exchanges within my Timothy funds? What do you think?
Yeah, so in the fund ETF strategy, most of the timely day-to-day management decisions are done by the good folks at the Timothy plan. So when you use ETFs or mutual funds, you're basically hiring professional management to choose biblically responsible companies for you, rather than building a portfolio of individual companies yourself. So you don't really and you don't ever really need to time the market. But what I would say, if you're using the fund or ETF strategy, if you rebalance once or twice a year, you're probably fine. And that's probably why you chose the fund ETF strategy. It's a little bit of a less hands-on way of investing in a biblically responsible way. So the holdings of your funds or ETF can change regularly. So you don't have to worry about, that part of it. I would just say, to stick to your asset allocation and, rebalance once or twice a year.
Awesome, Shana. James from New York is up next here. James is saying, over the past few months, I've seen story after story of companies filing for bankruptcy, yet they all seem to stay in business. Could you explain how a company can file for bankruptcy but still have money to operate? How does that work, Shana?
Yeah, so companies can file for bankruptcy, and there's different kinds of bankruptcy. I mean, some of it leads to a total liquidation, and the company is completely liquidated. But sometimes there is reorganization, where a company will go to a court, and the court will tell them, who they have to pay back and how much they have to pay back. And sometimes companies are able to reorganize and emerge from bankruptcy.
Good stuff. Next one, Shana, is Claude from Louisiana saying, I signed the petition. Thank you for that, Claude. Several of others have signed it as well.
Yes, thank you.
His question is, who at the company gets these emails that we send? So once we get the petition signed, all the signatures, who at the company will then receive it?
Well, for this particular one, you'll see some names at the top of the petition that you sign. That's who they're going to go to. But, most publicly traded companies have an investor relations department. Shareholder services or investor relations is what they typically call it. And you can find that by going to their website. It's there. Sometimes there's a phone number. Sometimes there's only an email. Sometimes there's a name that goes along with it. But what we do is we send it to the highest ranking person at the company that we have contact information for. Sometimes that is only shareholder or investor relations, but we send it over there. We're also exploring ways that we can maybe get more involved and draft some shareholder resolutions. That's how companies a lot of times get these issues in front of shareholders, So unfortunately, there's big groups of shareholders, big blocks of companies that are controlled by custodians like BlackRock and State Street and Fidelity, and lots of times they vote the proxies. So, we're more focused on the individual stewardship and not owning these companies, but we want to tell them. And I think in today's environment, it's going to warrant us getting more and more involved, because we're just seeing more and more large companies fall off of the wagon. They're getting engaged in these agendas, and they're becoming companies that we can no longer choose to invest in.
Yeah, well said there, Shana. Let's jump on over to the Ask Shana page, another of our partner benefits that you mentioned earlier in the show. Kim is the first one here. She's 63, and she's saying the FDIC insures up to $250,000 per person per bank. So if your deposits total $500,000, you can split the amount into $250K at one bank and the rest at another. This way, all your money's fully insured. SIPC insurance covers single investors up to $500,000 per account. If your deposit total is in an individual brokerage account, it's over $1 million. Should you split the amount at one brokerage firm and the rest at another? Shana, is Kim correct there in the things that she's saying?
Yeah. So what you really have to understand, though, is what FDIC insurance covers and what SIPC insurance covers. So although you may want to split up your deposits at different banks for FDIC reasons, that insures against the failure of the institutions. We saw a couple of failures last year. I mean, failures happen all the time, not on a widespread basis, but so many times a bank will close on a Friday and reopen under a different name, and that's because the FDIC has come in, they've identified some problems, they've shut them down, and they're going to reopen under another name. So it makes sense sometimes to split up your deposits for banks, but as far as splitting up between different brokerages, I don't think that that's really necessary. In fact, I think it's more of a hindrance than it would provide any benefit, because it's more accounts that you have to keep up with, more statements, doing transactions in different places is kind of a logistical nightmare. So you have to know that SIPC only protects the custody function of the broker-dealer. So if a broker-dealer ceases to exist and they lose securities or things like that, that's what it protects against. It doesn't protect against loss. You want to make sure that you completely understand that. And the SIPC insurance is very, very rarely even used, or it very rarely comes into play. So, I think that splitting up your brokerage accounts is really more of a hindrance than any kind of, asset for you.
Good stuff, Shana. Thank you. I think we got time for one more before the ag here. Pat is 71. Pat's saying, I'll be rolling my monies out of my TSP, as invested in the TSP model 55 and up, to an IRA. Should I move all the TSP monies to the F or G fund before the rollover? What do you think, Shana?
Doesn't say what the timing is between now and when she'll roll it over. I would say if it's a year, around a year, you could go ahead and move it all to the G fund just to prevent any volatility. But I think the better strategy is just to roll it over when the time comes, because when you roll it over, it's all going to go to cash anyway. So I think that's the better strategy, is just let it all go to cash whenever you do the rollover.
Awesome. Good stuff.
Well, we're going to hear from Craig Haugaard. He's got our ag report today. He's going to tell us what's going on in the agricultural and commodity markets. After Craig, we're going to take a short break, and then we'll be back with more financial issues. So don't go anywhere. If you've got a question, get your call queued up. 610-363-1110. Here comes Craig.
This is Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for June 25th. Regional flooding in the Western Corn Belt, the expectation of a lower crop rating, and competitive world export offers were unable to push corn to a positive close on Monday. December corn was $1.50 lower as it settled at $4.51 3/4. Soybeans benefited from the sale of soybean meal to the Philippines, as that sale reinforced the belief that Argentinian crushers are not meeting the demand and we could push more business to the U.S. Weather in the Western Corn Belt is leading to flooded roads and soft rail beds, which probably is going to slow processing rates for both soybeans and corn due to logistical problems. At the close, November beans were 10.5 cents higher at $11.30 1/2. Wheat production forecasts for Russia are on the rise, as it appears that the trade has worked the Russian worst-case scenario into prices, and now that the problem doesn't appear to be as severe as was feared, the risk premium is coming back out of the market. Russian cash prices are holding steady while U.S. markets have fallen to close the gap between U.S.-Russian prices of the narrowest in months. The goal seems to be getting that gap close enough to capture more export business here in the U.S. The closing bell Minneapolis September wheat was 4.5 cents lower at $6.12 3/4. Kansas City was a half-cent higher as it closed at $5.87 1/2. Chicago was 4 3/4 cents lower at $5.71. Cotton futures rallied as the dollar weakened. At the closing bell, new crop December futures were 118 points higher at 73.39. Livestock futures were mixed. We had August live cattle 67.5 cents higher, $184.82 per hundredweight. August feeder cattle were 52.5 cents stronger, settling at $258.90 per hundred. And our August lean hog futures were $2.60 lower, closing out today at $86.72.5 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures had a very tight trading range, but eked out a better close. When the closing bell rang, we had July futures 12 points better at $19.87. Well, this has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
Samuel Case, news anchor with FISM News, sits down to read real comments from real viewers.
All righty, another big man here. Let's see. Ooh, upside down. Jen Harris, 52. She says, whoa, this is how I remember the news being when I was younger. Wow, Jen, are you actually 52 years old? That's not too old. You don't have to say when I was younger. You're young now. Anyway, she says, it was just information back then, read by a person who read well and said things in a way that was pleasant to the ear, but no bearing on the information. Well, Jen, I got to say, that's awesome that you think I read well and that I'm pleasing to the ear. Actually, I got to ask, is this a legit comment or you guys pulling one over? It's real? Okay, well, Jen, you have a good taste in news anchors here. And it's also awesome to hear that you don't think we're overbearing with our opinions and that we're just getting right at the point and that you're actually getting legit news from us here at FISM News. That's awesome.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same, or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common, the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Thanks for sticking with us through the duration of the program here. Well, we asked for phone calls from partners, and we got some. So let's get right to the phones. We've got Cecilia calling from Florida. Hi, Cecilia. You're live on Financial Issues.
Oh, thanks, Shana, for taking my call. I just have been listening the last couple days. I just can't get over how simple really the strategy is. And you said something a while ago that triggered this call. You said that when our eyes are open and we can see, it's all by grace. We know that. But the idea of how simple the strategy is, I'm 73. I always deferred my savings. I've always saved, but we work so hard, all of us do, to get this money, and I knew nothing about how to use it appropriately, biblically, and it was just such a novel idea that I could take my spiritual walk and actually put it into the money part of my life. And the strategy is so simple. You guys are on the front line of the battle with biblically responsible. And all we have to do is get in behind you and be strong, faithful, just trust. And it goes right along with our faith in God. The trust is the only thing he wants. He wants our hearts, and the money won't matter if we're following after him. But I just want to call and say thank you for all.
Thanks for doing that. You know, Cecilia,
Awesome.
Do you remember what it was? What was your experience like? Did you hear something that stood out to you and you were your heart was immediately convicted? Or was your curiosity piqued and you kept listening and, eventually moved to make a decision?
I think my husband had been listening for over a year, but I would go in the other direction because my brain just couldn't wrap around money. I just, for whatever reason, couldn't. And then one day we had been arguing about money, and he said, I want you to listen to this guy. I think you'll like him. And I went in, and the first show I was hooked. Dan was talking about IRAs, and I had just moved one of mine around, and he said, you can take it and you can run the show. You can pick your stocks. We'll list them on the buy list. You buy them according to what you need. And he was just, it was just at the right time, at the right moment. And I was hooked. And then the town hall meeting, the first time we went to Warren Robins, Georgia, and it was raining. It was raining so bad. I thought nobody's going to show up for this thing. It was loaded with people. People just, they would come just to hear and be in person with Dan. He was a tough show to follow.
Yes,
and that's what you were doing amazing. Nobody wakes up in the morning unless it's something like Seth. I'm going to be a producer and do all this. Your forte is financial issues over here in an office and talking with one-on-one customers, and all of a sudden you're in front of the radio doing this. So it's insurmountable. So we know only by the grace of God. He will take care of us, and that includes our money if we just hold faithful, and follow it. But it was more of the student was ready and a teacher appeared moment, and it worked out great for us. Our portfolio, my IRA that he told me, I called him and he told me how to move it. Most of us don't know anything about taking the company IRA that's really ours and moving it. And y'all make it so simple. All you do is call in and say, what do I do? You guys know the answers. And you can guide. And he guided me from that point on, and I called often the first couple of years. We started in 2019, and it's just been indescribably good. So I do all my tithing. He even told me that. He said, well, don't take it out of your account. Take it out of your IRA account and get them to send you a checkbook. And he went all the way through that with me. Just the guidance.
That's great.
The guidance.
Awesome.
Yeah, I couldn't afford you if I had to pay for you any more than $135. It's wonderful. It's just wonderful. But I just want to call in and let you guys know how valuable you are. Don't give up. Hold tight.
Thank you, Cecilia. That was great.
Cecilia.
I know that encouraged somebody today.
Yeah. God bless you.
I hope so.
Yeah.
All
Two
right,
people
guys,
right here
care.
that just encouraged for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, many more.
That's what it's all about. We gotta hang together because it's out there. All right, guys.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
It is.
And
Thanks,
have
Cecilia.
a blessed week. Bye, guys.
You too, Cecilia.
You too.
God bless. Well, that's awesome, Shana.
That is awesome.
Yeah, that's good.
That means so much. We've got another call?
Yeah, we do. We got Margaret, Louisiana. Good morning, Margaret. You're live on Financial Issues. What's on your mind?
Yes, hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I've been a partner for years, and my question is about Social Security. I'm going to be 69 in October, and my question is, can I draw my Social Security with full benefits if I continue to work?
Well, it'll depend. You can draw it. If you make over certain amounts, then your Social Security can be reduced. I don't know what those are off the top of my head. And of course, your Social Security will be taxed if you have other income, over minimum levels. But yes, you can draw it, and you probably should start drawing at age 70. A great resource would be the Social Security Administration website. You can register on there. You can get estimates of what your personal benefits would be. I would encourage you to do that. And then a lot of times you can call them or actually go into a local office and, get the details of what your own, personal benefits would look like.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right.
And then, Margaret, just so you know, that website, if you need it, ssa.gov. ssa.gov. It's real simple.
Great. Appreciate it.
Good stuff.
Thanks, Margaret.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks for calling. It gets real active here at the end.
It does, Shana. I know it's always fun in the last segment here. I think we got one more call coming in. While we're waiting for that, let's jump back over to Ask Shana if that works for you. Brock is wondering if we've ever screened a company with the ticker symbol NVO. Shana, he doesn't see it on the broad list. Seems like their weight loss medication would have a huge opportunity for growth, but he does not want to support them if they're not biblically responsible. Now he's read some projections they could grow into one of the world's largest companies. What do you think, Shana? Brock's 49.
Yep, I hear a lot about that company too, but they're dirty. So they don't screen clean. They fail screens for abortion and lifestyle, which is the promotion of the LGBTQ lifestyle, alternative lifestyles. Lifestyles alternative to what God says, the way God says that we should live in the scriptures. So not on our broad list, not going to be. Unless they do something different. There are a couple, and I would agree. This is a huge opportunity. I think I've heard some statistics somewhere that we're on track for about 50% of our population to be technically considered obese, and there's lots of strong medical proof that obesity leads to so many other healthcare related conditions, and so. There's a lot of interest in these GLP-1s, I think that is what they're called, the weight loss drugs. So, yes, I think it's going to be very successful. There's even talk of Medicare starting to maybe consider including coverage of some of these for weight loss purposes rather than just for treatment of diabetes. So, yep, I think that there's going to be some success there for those kind of companies, but we're not willing to compromise.
Well
and
said,
it doesn't
Shana.
sound like Brock is either. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well done there, Brock. That's good. Next one, Shana, we have here is Eugene asking about TE91. He's 64 years old. He bought it about 2 years ago. It was way up. Dan said it was a very long-term hold. I don't really need the money, he says, thanks be to God and the FISM ministry. And I wonder if the big run-up is over and the money could be better used elsewhere. You've probably addressed many questions like this before, but what do you think, Shana, for Eugene?
Yeah, so that's one that has been on the buy list for a while. It's not currently. It has experienced a little bit of a pullback here recently. I don't think it's quite enough of a pullback for it to get back on our list, but I think the company has a very bright future. This is all about AI. They are the leader. This is what really kicked off the AI rally when they posted blockbuster earnings last May, and they've just continued to consistently perform. The stock is very highly valued right now. So what I would say is if you own it, that's great. Don't sell out of it completely, but just manage your exposure. If you bought it 2 years ago, I would imagine that you're up a lot. So the 1 to 3% position that you probably initially took is probably representing, 5% or more of your portfolio. So I would trim some back, but I think it is going to be a good company going forward.
Awesome, Shana. Wish we had time for some more, but we were coming to the end.
As long as it stays biblically responsible.
That's right. Yeah, especially with that company there. Yeah, it's good.
Yep. So we are watching it.
Yeah.
Hope we don't have to sell it, but we won't hesitate if we need to.
Amen.
Well, folks, speaking of sell alerts, go over and sign the petition for Crocs. Let them know that we won't tolerate activity that invests God's money into things that are contrary to our Christian values. And come back tomorrow because, Lord willing, we will be here to remind you that time is getting short. The Master is coming back. There's going to be a test, and we want to help you give good answers and be found a good and faithful steward when you give your answers before the Lord one day. Check us out in the meantime, financialissues.org, and come back tomorrow for more financial issues.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has